Let's do it, folks. It's happening. Hello, I'm Lee Camp, the most censored comedian journalist in America. This is Dangerous Ideas. Thank you for joining me. I got a hell of a show for you today. Today, I'm going to reveal who will be winning the U.S. presidential election. I promise you, I will be revealing that truth to you in just a few minutes. I also, and you might be thinking, how the hell could he know that? Because I'm very smart. Okay, very, very smart. But boy, that was very Trumpian of me, wasn't it? I'm just the smartest guy in the world. Also, I'll be discussing some updates on Israel's genocide on Gaza, as well as new evidence that the IDF, and as well as Israeli police, did a lot, if not almost all, of the killing that was done on October 7th at the Nova Music Festival, the biggest slaughter of the entire number of people that was killed on October 7th. There is a lot of new evidence on that front that I will be bringing you in just a few minutes. Little update on what has been going on in Gaza. Nearly 100,000 Palestinians have either been killed, injured, or are missing at this point. There are actually a lot missing. People don't talk about that much because there is so much rubble. There is so many collapsed buildings. Something like, I believe, 60% of the structures in Gaza are either fully collapsed or damaged. Also, Israel's war on Gaza, as I've mentioned before, this is coming from Al Jazeera, is the deadliest for journalists, I believe, in history, but at least in recent history, maybe ever. Now, granted, back in Civil War days, I don't think there were as many journalists around fighting, but still, this is the deadliest battle, war, really genocide, but it's the deadliest for journalists in history, perhaps recent history, but maybe ever. It's also the deadliest for UN workers ever. It's also the deadliest percentage-wise for children ever. Because Israel is bombing so indiscriminately and 50% of Gaza is children, they have been killing a crazy percentage of children. As you might have heard me mention before, that the average for modern warfare is 6 to 8% of those killed are children. In Gaza, it is 43 to 45% of those are children. Over 10,000 have been murdered in just 3 months. So there's a little update of what's going on in Gaza right now. I'm going to bring you more about Israel as we get more into this hour, but I'm going to start off with the U.S. presidential election because we did just have the Iowa caucus. This is all very important stuff. Very important what's going on here. It's very important that we have our presidential election go on for roughly 2 to 3 years out of a 4-year cycle. Whereas other countries, most countries, perhaps all countries, only have their elections go on for a few months because that's, what a rational group of humans would do. But ours goes on for years. And Trump has this is from the AP, Trump notches a commanding win in the Iowa caucuses as DeSantis edges Haley for second place. And this title tells us two things. One is that Trump is still going to crush those who his competitors in the Republican Party, even as he fights roughly 735 indictments. He is still easily winning these primaries. The other thing this title tells us, DeSantis edges Haley for second place, is that mainstream media has not learned of the sexual term edging. They still are unfamiliar with that, and so they continue to use it in their titles. And it's awkward for all of us, for really most people. It's very awkward that the AP is talking about DeSantis edging Haley because we don't want to think about that. We don't have that mental image, but we also don't want to think of DeSantis having ever had sex in any way. And it's, again, very upsetting. So, AP, could you tone it down with the sexually explicit titles? That would be really excellent for all of us involved. But so, and I realize I'm giving this away pretty early in this hour, but I am going to tell you, I've built it up, and I'm going to tell you who's going to win the presidential election this year, 2024, so we can skip all of the months and months of haggling about it, arguing about it. By the way, before I do reveal it, click thumbs up. And if you're watching on Rumble or YouTube, please click subscribe, then click the bell icon. That's the only way I'm able to let people know about this stuff. Now, granted, it's still heavily suppressed, but less so on Rumble. So please make sure you click the bell icon when you click subscribe. But all right, here is the truth about who will win the presidential election, so that we can all stop talking about it, so that we can just give it a break, so we can move on. I'm going to reveal it right now so we can move on to other things. The winner will be, of the presidential election, the rich, racist, corporatist, sociopathic, corrupt, vapid skin suit predator is going to win. That's who's going to win. The man who has supported every American bomb landing on every innocent child is going to win. The man who has achieved nothing to help the people actually struggling across this nation and around the world. The man whose vacant eyes are somehow less scary than his morally bankrupt action. The man who has done and will do nothing to even remotely move this country and the world toward a sustainable future, a future we'd be proud to pass on to our children, as opposed to a festering pile of overheating, dying refuse that has been just excreted out of the anus of capitalism. The man who has grown America's brutal police force, built up America's brutal prison system, grown America's Orwellian surveillance state, built up America's genocidal military, and grown America's bloodthirsty corporate oligarchy until it is bulging at the seams. That is who will be the next president. It'll be the man who continues to tell you that wage slavery is freedom, that surveillance is privacy, that war is peace, that thick, oily extinction is sustainability, that locking up the innocent is justice, that crushing the hopes and creativity of the young is education, that ignoring systemic racism is somehow forward-thinking and progressive, that crushing debt is success, that government propaganda is intrepid journalism, that pushing for nuclear war is security, that destroying and or extracting the wealth and happiness of every other country is diplomacy, that a rigged, bought-out shit show election is a free and fair democracy, and that lies are truth, while truth, is fake news. That guy will win the presidential election. That guy will be the next president of the United States. Whether it's Trump or Biden or DeSantis or Gavin Newsom, it will still be that guy. I don't need to tell you how corrupt and wrong-headed and fascist Trump is. Hopefully that's a given to you. But of course, he and Biden agree on 90% of the core issues of this country. And when it comes to where to what the teetering corpse of Joe Biden has done with his first term, here's an analysis. I'm going to quote from Patrick Lawrence, writing at Sheer Post. He does great writing there. This is his analysis. He says, this is a president who has supplied and financed a proxy war in Ukraine that has failed after killing scores of thousands of people and displacing millions more. This is a president who now sponsors a genocide in Gaza as the world watches in real time. This president's signature project, America will lead democratic nations in a crusade against the world's authoritarians, is virtually nowhere taken seriously around the world. This is a man who presides with imperial distance over a republic that is tumbled into spiritual and social collapse and extreme economic inequality, all the while displaying more or less complete indifference to the national plight. This is a president facing articles of impeachment based on a plentiful evidence that he participated in the influence peddling schemes of his son and brother. That's from Patrick Lawrence talking about Biden. But nearly that entire quote could apply to Donald Trump when he was president, except for maybe the brother part. But almost the entire quote could go for either of them. And that is who will be the next president of the United States. And just to be clear, I'm not delegitimizing Cornel West, Claudia De La Cruz, Jill Stein, or the grayish brown rock that I'm running for president. While they won't win the presidency, I think their goals of putting forward important ideas to the American people are crucial. It's crucial. So they should by all means do that. Keep doing that. But the presidential election should not live rent-free in all of our goddamn heads, using up 95% of our anger and passion and ire and hopes and dreams and disgust and cynicism. Save that disgust in cynicism. Don't use it all on the goddamn presidential election from now until November. Instead, it should be the reverse. The presidential election should use up less than 5% of the bandwidth that goes on in here, the bandwidth for creating change or caring about this world, just as the presidency is a small piece of the harm of the American empire. Discussing it should be a small piece of our time and effort. So I just wanted to tell you who would win the presidency so that we can stop talking about it and instead focus on issues such as the genocide Israel's committing, or the fact that 2/3 of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, or the fact that money and debt is actually a mental construct and we're allowing it to kill us in our future. You know, we can talk about those things, maybe, every once in a while. Just an idea. Hope that helped. Hope that was slightly helpful in who's going to win the presidential election. Okay, now let's get to so many other important stories that I want to cover. So many other important stories, but just as a little palate cleanser, I just want to show you this short video of my friend Medea Benjamin next to which idiot congressperson is this? Susskind, right? Oh, sorry, Raskin. Jamie Raskin, as he's trying to speak, and
the political scientists tell us that the hallmarks of an authoritarian or fascist political
it's just standing there with a sign that says Israel's not above the law.
Their way. Two,
co-founder of Code Pink, of course.
They openly embrace,
and she's slowly grabbed by armed thugs and just pulled away. This is a 5'2", 60-something-year-old woman wearing a pink hat with a little sign that says Israel's not above the law. And they have to grab her and yank her away from the congressman as he speaks. Because, you know, we can't have truth holding up a sign. You can have a sign that speaks the truth next to a congressperson. And that's what our police are useful for, you know. They're useful to come and grab individuals like that. And by the way, she had a few people with her who were also there, but I guess they grabbed them later. Maybe they grabbed her first. But anyway, Medea Benjamin, always doing wonderful work out there. She's always out there getting in the faces of our Congress people about these issues. So to circle back to Israel for a moment, I brought you a lot about how Israel's committing genocide and South Africa's legal argument in front of the UN and the other day. And anyway, this is from the Independent, even Scotland Yard has an investigation going on Israel committing war crimes. And of course, they're getting attacked for doing so. How dare you talk about Israel committing war crimes? And this from the article, the Metropolitan Police have defended their investigation of alleged war crimes in the Israel-Gaza war, saying they are obliged to do it, meaning obliged to have the investigation, by an international agreement. Boris Johnson and other critics have hit out at the decision by Scotland Yard to appeal for information from anyone returning from Israel or the Palestinian territories who thinks they have seen war crimes, terrorism, or crimes against humanity. So they put out, which is funny, they'd even have to put out a request for witnesses, considering there's video of a lot of this stuff. But they're asking for people to let them know if you've seen war crimes in Gaza. We would love to speak to you. which is kind of hilarious. The idea that they would need to. We're just looking for a few people who've noticed war crimes or crimes against humanity being perpetrated. If anyone could volunteer some information, I recommend they just look at all the videos, hundreds and hundreds of videos of these war crimes being committed. But anyway, even Scotland Yard is now investigating war crimes perpetrated by Israel. Another interesting fact of just how morally bankrupt Israel has become. Dan Cohen's reporting hundreds of Israeli MKs, members of Knesset, public figures, rabbis, community leaders, professors, and journalists are calling for an end to humanitarian aid in Gaza. There's hundreds have publicly signed a request to please stop giving aid to Gaza. Most of the aid is not even being allowed in anyway. So how morally bankrupt and insane is it that you have hundreds of so-called leaders, quote unquote leaders in Israel, trying to stop any aid from getting in? Here's a quote. We, the undersigned, call for an immediate stop to the introduction of trucks transporting fuel, gas, and related equipment to the hostile enemy in the Gaza Strip, as the Israeli government promised at the beginning of the war, the letter reads. This is genocide. Sorry, this is genocide is not part of the quote. Obviously, that's Tan adding to it. The quote is of people trying to stop aid getting into Gaza, which is so remarkably morally bankrupt, so remarkably genocidal. To not, there are many people that try and defend what Israel's doing is like, oh, they don't, they don't like that they're killing innocent people, but they're just trying to get Hamas. But as you can see, many of these people are not even going that far. They're not even just saying that. They're saying, please stop giving water or food to children or babies in Gaza. These are community leaders, some of the members of the goddamn parliament, saying, stop letting water in, please, because that's a real problem. Many of these people have somehow managed to find water. What horrific human beings. What soulless pieces of garbage. Unbelievable. But okay, so I promised you, and I wanted to get to the new information, pretty shocking new information about, more of these details keep coming out about October 7th and the truth of it and exactly what happened. And as I've said, there are very few claiming that Hamas didn't kill anyone or didn't kill anyone innocent. Very few are claiming that. But the numbers, we're told, 1,200, innocent people were killed by Hamas. But we keep seeing more and more, and it's kind of a trickle, but it keeps coming out of just how many the IDF or Israeli police killed on October 7th. And it's in the hundreds. And so the biggest, as many of you know, the biggest area or moment where, in terms of number of people killed, was this music festival. And we're getting slowly, a lot of it's been covered up, but slowly we're getting more and more information on what exactly went down there. Quick reminder, please make sure you click thumbs up, leave a comment, whether you got something to say or not. Helps with the algorithm, so please do that. Okay, so this article is titled, How Israeli Forces Trapped and Killed Ravers at the Nova Music Festival. Israeli officials allege that Hamas carried out a premeditated, supposed to say premeditated. They put premediated, which would be weird. Premeditated and carefully executed massacre of 364 Israeli civilians at the Nova Music Festival near Gaza on October 7th. So 364 would be like a third or fourth of those of the total number they're saying were killed or taken as hostages. They claim that Hamas and other Palestinians had hours to murder Israeli partygoers before the army reached the music festival. However, new details have emerged showing that Israel's border police was deployed at the Nova site before Hamas stumbled upon the festival. So this is before Hamas even arrived. There were police arriving to the festival because they already knew the police and the government already knew that Hamas had breached the gate, right, and were coming into Israel, a place that they technically should be allowed to go. But Israel has put up a fence and a wall and turned it into an open air prison. You get the point. Anyway, causing the eruption of a major battle. While some ravers, this is perhaps the key point, while some ravers were indeed killed by the Palestinian resistance, whether by intent or in the chaos of battle, the evidence now suggests that the majority of civilian deaths were likely inflicted by Israeli forces themselves. This was due to the overwhelming firepower employed by occupation forces, including from Apache attack helicopters, and because Tel Aviv issued the controversial Hannibal Directive to prevent Hamas from taking Israeli partygoers as captives. Now, I've told you in previous live streams all about the Hannibal Directive, how Israel uses it, and how it basically is a directive saying if someone's taken hostage, you kill the hostage, you kill the hostage takers, and you kill everyone around. Just obliterate the area, because they'd rather just kill everyone than have hostages taken. And they did that on October 7th. So here's the thing. As I continue to go through this information, you're welcome to say that is a great idea, and I'm glad they did it. I am glad the IDF and the border police killed as many people as possible rather than let hostages be taken. If that's your viewpoint, then argue away. Fine. Endorse that viewpoint. But what you can't say is that, oh, no, everyone at this music festival that was killed by Hamas, because that is factually incorrect. One person, a policeman working as a security guard at the festival, was among the first to confront Hamas fighters near Nova and witness the early arrival of helicopters, the IDF helicopters. During the fighting, 59 Israeli police officers were killed, including at least 17 at the Nova festival. Avi Meir of the Jerusalem Post asserted that Hamas carefully planned to attack the festival in advance, intending to murder as many Israeli civilians as possible. The facts, though, tell an entirely different story. An Israeli police investigation reported by Haaretz, many of you know Haaretz is a definitely more on the left newspaper in Israel, but it is not radical by any means. It's kind of like a liberal newspaper. So you can get the truth from Haaretz a little more than most Israeli newspapers, but it's still not, it's not like some crazy leftist rag. It's a liberal outlet in Israel. Reported by Haaretz indicates that Hamas was unaware of the festival in advance. The official findings suggest that the intended target was Reim, a settlement and military base located just down the road from the Nova site. There's been a lot of evidence that, and by the way, thank you, Darren, for the donation. He says, in the UK, we have the next Tony Blair, Keir Starmer, looking likely to be our next prime minister. I think he will attempt to push Trump into a full war in Iran. So to go back to this, there's a lot of evidence that the Hamas fighters were going for military bases, going for kibbutzes that had military connections. But of course, many of them did not get to the locations they were hoping to hit, because they were either stopped beforehand or they maybe got confused as to where the hell they were. I don't know how good their Waze app is. The Hamas fighters running into Israel. I don't know whether their Google Maps, whether Siri was really helping them. Siri, name an IDF site that I can run to kill people. Anyway, to continue from the article, as people exited the festival site, did I get into? I may have skipped it, but oh, no, I think I'm getting to it in a minute, so I won't give it away. As people exited the festival site by car and moved onto Route 232, Israeli police established roadblocks in both directions, leading to a traffic jam that trapped many partygoers in the area where fighting between Hamas and the border police would eventually break out. Did you catch that? They put up roadblocks stopping people from exiting the festival, and thereby sticking them in a firefight between Hamas and border police. And so whether these police were intentionally, trying to kill innocent civilians, or whether they just had trapped them there in the middle of a armed battle, you can argue that point. But what we do know is they did stop them from leaving. A lot of them, like hundreds and hundreds of people, could not get out. And this also lends evidence to the idea that that Israel was, intentionally causing a lot of harm to civilians, possibly killing civilians, because they wanted this to happen. They wanted a reason to be able to commit this genocide in Gaza. They wanted to turn Gaza into a parking lot. Now, I'm not saying that that's absolutely true, that Israel was killing civilians for that reason. I would say it is just about absolutely true that they were killing civilians for the reason of the Hannibal Directive, believing that it's better to just kill everyone than to allow hostages to be taken. I think that at this point, with everything we've seen, is pretty inarguable. Pretty moot. Although I don't use the term moot often, because if you look it up in the dictionary, it means arguable, and the second definition is inarguable. So I think moot is a useless term, and I think the discussion of whether moot is useful is moot. I got to tell you that. Another witness, Shay Weinstein, also confirms that Israeli police roadblocks that blocked the main exit from the festival. He took photos of a border police vehicle and heavily armed policemen in combat gear impeding the road in front of his car. A cell phone video from the concert attendee shows Israeli police and security forces using their vehicles to block the road near the festival site and exchanging fire with Hamas fighters. Again, all of this evidence is showing them blocking roads. And all of this evidence is showing that, and as you see, the photos on your screen are of burnt and destroyed vehicles. Well, guess what? Hamas did not, although Israel's trying to claim that Hamas was able to set all these vehicles on fire, Hamas did not have the firepower to destroy these vehicles like this. These vehicles were destroyed by things like grenades, things like the type of ballistics that could be shot from military helicopters. Many people have pointed out that Hamas did not have the type. They had guns. They had, and some of these may have been heavily automatic machine guns that could kill a lot of people at once. But could they easily set dozens of cars aflame, blowing up everyone inside? There's really been no evidence that they had that kind of military firepower. And this also goes with an article I brought you several weeks ago saying that Israel announced this themselves, so this is not a theory. Israel said that in order to protect the environment, to do the most environmentally friendly thing, they were going to take all of these burned cars with tons of evidence, blood, bullets, bullet holes, everything showing who committed this tragic moment, at least in terms of the cars. They're going to take all those cars and shred them and bury them. Shred the cars and bury them. I assume bury them in an undisclosed location. And why would they do that? They say it's for environmental purposes. I'll let you, just in your own mind, you decide whether it's for environmental purposes. The shredding and burying in a secret location of all of the evidence of what went down at this festival. I'll just let you decide whether you feel good about that explanation. It's for environmental reasons. Using vehicles, but body cam footage shows heavily armed police units taking up positions on the road and firing across the open field into the trees where civilians had taken cover. So you have a lot of these people in this festival realizing they can't get out through the exit, the regular exit or entrance, and trying to get away from the firefight, running across an open field towards the forest. Well, then you have the border police firing across the open field into the forest, killing a lot of people. Now, why would they do that? Well, there's only two possibilities. One is they want to kill civilians. Two is they are just deciding, well, maybe 1 out of 20 of these people is Hamas, so I'll just shoot all of them. I mean, beyond those two reasons, I don't know what other reason you could come up with. So they're quoting they're talking about a party goer, last name Karplus. Though Karplus and other partygoers were being fired on by the border police, they couldn't make sense of this and initially believed the shooting was from Hamas fighters disguised as police or soldiers. And if you're trying to defend Israel's view on these things, you may go, yeah, that's a good point. Maybe Hamas was disguised as border police. In other words, to go back to the article, these witnesses actually saw Israeli forces firing on them. For Hamas to have executed a plan involving elaborate disguises, the Nova operation would have had to be pre-planned. And the Israeli police investigation has already ruled out that Hamas was aware of the festival in advance, meaning they have said, even their own investigation, which I'm sure is filled with a lot of lies, they've said Hamas was unaware of this festival and stumbled across it. It was not in their planning. Moreover, no other site of clashes on October 7th reported sightings of Palestinian fighters donning Israeli uniforms, neither at the various breached settlements nor at the Israeli military bases they entered. So dressing up as IDF or border police seems to be nowhere in the Hamas plan, and yet you have all of these Israeli border police firing on civilians. Incredibly, Israeli officials claim it was Hamas fighters who destroyed hundreds of cars at Nova, burning their passengers alive, but Hamas did not have that kind of firepower. And this next part is coming from The Guardian. Guardian being a pretty neoliberal outlet, not a lot of edgy stuff coming from The Guardian. Guardian journalist Owen Jones noted this while discussing a 43-minute compilation of video footage from October 7th shown to select journalists by the Israeli army. So there's video footage of this stuff, but Israel is not showing it to a lot of people. But they did show selected excerpts to certain journalists. This Guardian journalist says Hamas fighters urge bullets to be saved for killing soldiers. One terrified reveler in a car is asked, "Are you a soldier?" So basically, they're saying in the footage, Hamas is going around through these people, trying to find out who the soldiers are, because they're killing soldiers, not just opening fire indiscriminately. Again, I'm not endorsing any of this. I'm anti-war, so I don't endorse murder. But there is an importance in getting to the truth of this, which is that Hamas was trying to kill soldiers, and the border police shows up along with the later helicopters and fire pretty indiscriminately on civilians. As Jones, the Guardian journalist, also says, so there is clearly some distinction being made between civilians and soldiers in the footage selected by Israel of the thousands of hours of footage which we don't see, which Israel is refusing to show. So if that's what Israel is showing, think about what Israel's not showing. A major reason Hamas launched the operation was to take Israeli captives that could be exchanged for thousands of Palestinians held captive in Israeli prisons, which is thousands. It's 8 to 10,000 Palestinians are currently hostage in Israeli prisons. But Israeli forces were determined to prevent Hamas from taking captives back to Gaza, even if this meant killing the captured civilians. On October 7th, according to the Yedioth Ahronoth investigation, the Hannibal Directive, which has previously only applied to army captives, was issued against Israeli civilians as well. And that part of the Hannibal Directive being issued against civilians on October 7th also fits with what we have heard spoken from their own faces of Israeli tank gunners. There was a puff piece on the all-girl, all-female Israeli tank gunner squad. And as I showed it on this live stream several weeks ago, one of them says, we were told to fire the tank on a civilian structure because there were terrorists in there. That's what they call Hamas fighters. They don't call Israeli fighters terrorists. They don't call U.S. military terrorists, but Hamas fighters are terrorists. So they were told to fire in a civilian structure, and the woman said, aren't there civilians in there? And her commander said, I don't know, just fire. And she then says, so I decided not to fire my tank. I just fired a gun at the civilian structure, which seems kind of odd. If you're deciding to kill people inside this structure, why not go for broke? Why not swing for the fences? So there you have it. More proof as it continues to trickle out here and there and everywhere. More proof that many of the hundreds killed on October 7th were killed by the IDF. Now, again, I'm not saying that the Israeli government was like, yay, let's kill a lot of civilians. But I am saying that they got a command to kill civilians that day, along with Hamas. And man, did they do it. And now they're trying to cover up a lot of it. Okay, I'm about to bring you an insane news story about how Israel wants to build the world's largest Ferris wheel to commemorate their genocide on Gaza. Not kidding. I'm also going to bring you some insanity from the NYPD, as well as who exactly is buying up all of the houses in the United States, and they may own up to 40% of all houses in the United States by 2030. I'm going to bring you all of that at rumble.com/Lee Camp, as well as my locals page that's free to watch at rumble.com/Lee Camp. If you are not following me there, which I don't know why you wouldn't, but if you're not following me there, I hope you will at least click subscribe wherever you're watching, click follow, click the bell icon, and join me now over at rumble.com/Lee Camp. All of my stuff, by the way, if you forget where my stuff is and you want to find like my podcast, I have 3 podcasts. You want to find my book. You want to find my, one of my several books. You want to find other live streams and things like that. You want to find out how to support this show. It's all at linktree.com/Lee Camp. So easy place to find all that. You're like, I know he had a podcast, but I can't keep track of all this shit. It's at linktree.com/Lee Camp. Probably just Google Linktree and Lee Camp. Probably find it there as well. Okay, rumble.com.